Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Lamar Darnell Shields.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time you're listening to us. To all my bombers out there, I am here to bring you some healing, not just by the sound of my voice, because I bring on some of the most amazing, awesome, dope guests from around the globe to bless you with some amazing things that they're doing. Sound Bombers, you all know this. I know some of the superheroes and sheroes across the country, and I get a chance to sit down with them in the bomb shelter to have a conversation with them. And because I believe in you and I'm excited about who you are, you get a chance to have a close seat next to these amazing individuals. And they are amazing because they are doing some awesome things, and they are providing you with some very specific strategies and things which you can do. As always, we want to send you some prayers and blessings and raise the elevation of energy across this globe, because we know that we're not focusing. There is an international epidemic or pandemic that is really allowing us to re-examine who we are and whose we are and who we're connected with. And so to all of my sound bombers, thank you for taking time to listen to me. Thank you for listening to all the other shows, and thank you for just supporting my podcast and all the other amazing podcasts out there. Again, this is going to be a special and amazing show, because every time I get a chance to walk into the studio and sit down, I am honored with some amazing people who have taken the time out of their busy schedule to sit with me. So I'm excited about that. So let's get started. So the artist Van Gogh is reported to have said this: if you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. And thank goodness that he did. Chances are sometimes we get into this psychic wrestling match with a little voice in our heads that chips away at your confidence and dials up to your doubts. What if you mess up? You'll make a fool of yourself. What will people say? You're not smart enough, talented enough, capable enough, experienced enough. And I'm sure many of you all have heard those things from yourself or from people in your circle. And we know self-doubt is part and parcel of the human experience, as it should. We don't have to look too far to see that too little self-doubt can be outright dangerous. Yet left unchecked, the fear that fuels our doubt can drive us to be overcautious and keep us from taking the very actions that would help us and serve others. I see far too many capable and talented, particularly women that I come in contact with, selling themselves short because they fear they don't have what it takes. Well, my next guest, Michelle Kuei, is passionate about emboldening people to live and lead more bravely and confidently by helping negative self-talkers discover inner strength and maximize potentials by overcoming their fear and judgments. Born in Taiwan and left with a disability as a result of a hit-and-run car accident when she was only 11 years old. But because of this tragedy, Michelle spent her early years in the hospital and struggled in a society and culture where beauty was weighed heavily on one's appearance. But her story doesn't end there. She went on to get a PhD, founded a successful coaching business, and still found time to climb the Inca Trail at Machu Picchu, Peru. So if you've been playing small all your life, and if you're ready to take control of your life and maximize your potentials for success, I need you to move closer to the speakers because Michelle has just joined me in the bomb shelter. How are you doing, Michelle?
I'm doing great. This is such a powerful, it's a powerful and really, really, you just summarize my whole life work
Hey, Michelle, let
in
me
just
just
a
tell
couple of
you,
minutes.
Michelle, you are in a small package, but homegirl, you have done some big, big things, and we did our homework because we want to let these listeners know, our sound bombers, how amazing you are. And so I'm honored to have you in the bomb shelter with you. So first of all, how are you doing? How are you dealing with the pandemic? How was
Oh,
your life?
life has been shifting in all different directions, right? What like I would have never imagined back in March that this was going to happen. And when it happened, because I had live event that was already planning in place, I had plans. Open up my calendar, I already know where I was gonna be in April. And suddenly when the pandemic hit, I had all these live events got canceled and my life was just kind of thrown into different places, different direction. And I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate to that, because suddenly we were told to stay home, don't do this, don't go out and stay away from people. It's not something that we're used to. We're in a culture where we embrace each other, we go out, we hug each other, we kiss people on the cheek, we shake hands, and we're told not to do that. And so it's a strange concept even for me, coming from a different culture background. I grew up here in United States. Everything I have learned is about embracing each other and shaking hands, being polite. But we're told not to do that. So it's causing me to rethink, rephrase myself this very moment.
Well, what I know about you from what my producer sent to me and from what I checked out on my own, you have been around tragedy your entire life. So I'm sure that this is just another part of that. Can you talk with my listeners about the tragedy that took place when you were 11 years old and how that tragedy has impacted your life right now and maybe how you're using that to fuel and to empower other individuals?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned before, I grew up in Taiwan, and I was a just like a regular, normal 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid. When I go to school, I want to be, part of the school, my classmates. And that day, one of the day, my mom was kind of running late to pick me up from school. So I was just playing and hanging out with my best friend, and we were approaching to meet my mom at the gate. At the gate, I didn't see my mom coming, so I sat with my friend and we were just chit chatting and we were just having a good time and we were talking and planning, what we're gonna do the next day. 11-year-old, like we were planning on going out to the rice field and just kind of set ourselves up in a little tiny square the following day after during the school break. And then I saw my mom coming from the opposite side of the street, so I got up and I wanted to meet her on the other side. So I got up and I was crossing the street, and suddenly I heard my best friend, she was yelling, she was waving at me. I turned and she was waving at me, and she said, "Stop, stop!" And I heard people rambling around, and there was a lot of noise in that moment. I couldn't comprehend what was going on, and I remember smelling the rubber. It smells really bad, and I heard people running, and there was just a lot of motion all happening all at once. By the time I actually had came back and knowing where I woke up, I was already in the hospital bed. From what I heard afterwards was that there was a car coming very fast. It must have just ran a red light and it was approaching me. And that's why my like all these motion was going on. But I didn't know that. By the time I realized it, I was already on the floor, and somehow someone must have got me to the hospital. But I remember waking up in the hospital. When I woke up, I saw my parents standing next to my bedside, and I looked down on my waist. I was feeling really tight, and it was really painful, like all over my body. But I looked down, I noticed from my waist down all the way to my ankle, I was wrapping plaster. And it was so tight, it was so uncomfortable. I just wanted to squeeze myself out of it. But I couldn't squeeze myself out of it, and I was trying to hold on to my mom while experiencing that painful moment, and it was very uncomfortable. So what happened was the doctor had to stabilize me. I had a lot of broken bones from my thigh all the way to my ankle. So in order to stabilize it, they had to wrap it with plaster. I got sent home after that. So I spent 3 months at my home in the living room of my home. My parents had set up a little corner in our living room, so I can stay in the living room without going and climbing up to the stair to my bedroom. So I spent 3 months just sleeping in the living room, and everything that I was able to get is, within the reach of my arms. And my sister was she was only 6 or 5 years old at that time, and so she was my little helper. I kind of learned to take things for granted, and I kind of direct her, go get this, go get the cup, go get my pen, go get my thing. So I got really used to in telling people what to do. I felt that sense of entitlement, and I think that was the starting point of me moving forward in my life, for the rest of pretty much for the 30 years of my life.
So you got used to just telling people what to do
Yep.
when you were
Mhm.
laid up on the couch. So how has that impacted you? How has it shifted your relationship with your sister at the time? Was this an older sister, younger sister, and then what? How are you using that tragedy that took place in your life to then now coach other individuals?
So she's younger. So my sister is younger, and for that sense of entitlement, here's the thing about that sense of entitlement. When we're in the tragedy or something that had, the event had caused us to be in a place, somehow that entitlement starts to develop, and we feel that everything, the world is against us. And of course, we deserve in telling people what to do. So it created that victim mentality of, you know what, this event happened to me. It's so bad. I feel so sorry for myself. And therefore, other people should feel sorry for me too. And therefore, I'm going to tell you what to do because this whole world owes me. Everybody owes me. Everybody, my parents, my sibling, they all owes me. And that's not a healthy mindset, because we know that, at least I've learned through that journey, is that nobody owes me anything. It happened to me. It just happened. It could happen to anyone else. It could happen to the next door neighbor. It happens to everybody. It doesn't discriminate anybody. So it just happened that the universe wants it to happen to me. But the upside is, through every tragedy, there's a big lesson that we learn. Like, what was that lesson I need to learn? And it took me 30 years to learn that lesson. And the funny thing is, the universe will just keep throwing these lessons at you, one at a time, until you finally stand up and say, okay, universe, I got it. Now I got it. So after I have seen all these patterns of that sense of entitlement, that mentality, that mindset of being a victim, I started to learn and see things from a different perspective. And that perspective is, it didn't just happen to me. It just happened. It's not about me. I am not the only victim in these type of tragedy. There are people around me who's going through the very same experience in a different form, shape, and ways. Like, for me, it was a physical tragedy. It was in a car accident. But for someone else, it could be losing a job. It could be a divorce. It could be something that's, internal and that we cannot see with our eyes. So that's what I have learned from that tragedy, that not everything is about me, and
And
I don't.
and
No
how
one owe me anything.
and how long did it take you to get there? Because again, this happened at 11 years old, and I know you spent a lot of time by yourselves. Do you remember at what age did you come to that realization? And then At what point then did you decide that this is what I want to do with the rest of my life? I know you have a pharmacy background, and then also know that you're coaching. But when did you know that you wanted to do it with the rest of your life? So let's go back to the early years. At what age did you say I need to start feeling sorry for myself? I need to move on. Then I need to learn. Did this happen in Taiwan, or did you start to shift when you came to the United States?
I started to shift in United States. So it didn't happen until when I was 40, and I'm 46 years old today. Not today, but this year.
We got
Um,
it. I was going to say happy birthday. Thank you. You spending time with me. I feel special.
well, you know what? Every day is my birthday. So
That's right.
please, yeah, every day is our birthday. So I didn't realize this. I didn't have this big revolution or that big epiphany until when I was 40 years old. So I spent 30 years of living in that mentality of I am the victim, and sometimes I get angry because my expectation cannot be met. And I was just going through that 30 years of my life. I was just going through the motion of trying to fit in. I had a job, like you said, I went to school. I went all the way. I got my doctor's degree, and I wanted to fit in because that's how I was taught. When you go to school, you have to get a degree, and when you get a degree, you have to get a job. And when you get a job, you're supposed to bring in income. But what people didn't teach me is that what is your passion? What is your calling? What do you feel passionate about? What's burning inside of you that light up the fire every day? I didn't know that I have a passion. I didn't know I have a purpose. I was looking for a purpose, and going through that journey of just graduating and getting a job and hopefully going into a relationship. I was trying to fit into the society, and that was heavily based on beauty or based on the first impression. Everywhere you go, when you go to a job interview, people look at you and they base upon your first impression. Do you like that person? How does that person look? Is that person tall enough? Can that person grab the things on their shelf? And I'll tell you that my first job when I worked in a pharmacy, I couldn't reach to the shelf. And I remember one of my colleagues actually came around and told me, "Oh, when they first hired you, I was really worried because I thought you couldn't fulfill your job duty because you're so short." And he said that it was surprising, it was shocking, but it was truth because people have that in their mind. That's how they believe people should look when they go to a job. So when I walked into the job, it's a complete different view. And of course, people will have doubt. And so I spent all 30 years trying to figure out and navigate my way to fit into the expectation of the culture, of the belief that we have. And my epiphany occurred when I was 40 years old. That one day I was just sitting there, I was starting to feeling sorry about myself again. And it was to the point where I heard that little voice that you were talking about, that's been keeping us small and keeping us just not doing our part and not using our full potential. That little voice was whispering, "Michelle, when are you going to stop being small?" And it was shocking to me because that was the first time I ever heard that voice of, huh, what do you mean? That is there a possibility for me to live any different way? What would that possibility be? So I started to ask the question, why? Like, why am I here? What is my purpose? If this had happened to me, why does it only happen to me? What is the universe trying to say to me? How do I use what I have to serve others? And how do I serve others by being here? I have a job. I am being a pharmacist, but that's great, but it doesn't get me really excited. It doesn't excite me. It doesn't make me want to jump off my bed and go to work. So why? Why am I here? And when I was 40 years old, I started to really dive into the question why. As I was going through the process of discovering it, I realized that for the longest time, I always saw myself, my physical challenge, as the biggest challenge in my life. And that moment, that day, I said to myself, okay, so this physical challenge is my challenge. What can I do to challenge this physical challenge? So I went to Target and I bought one of those balancing exercising ball. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like, a big, huge ball, and you just bring it, and people use it in yoga.
Yeah, I
So
use it
I
quite
bought,
a bit. I use it for my ab workout, and it's a great tool. Yes, so I'm familiar with it.
yeah, and I was thinking about my ab too, when I was 40, because I noticed when I sitting behind the wheel, my tummy was sticking,
See, you
pushing
said
against
that.
the
I didn't
wheel.
say that.
No worry, yeah.
You in this self
I didn't,
actualization phase. You like I'm having a lot of self talk.
and for a long time I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was my tummy sticking into the wheel. I noticed when I came off, there was like marks from my belt. So I bought one of those balancing balls. I said, well, even a little bit would help, right? Since I can run and I can jump back at that time, then the very least I can do is maybe I can sit on the ball and just rock myself. So I started doing that. I did that for like a week or so. And then I realized, well, I got to do more. What can I do to get more? And I began to look into, well, maybe I can sign up to a gym. And mind you, I never walked into the gym in my whole entire life ever. And I don't know how to use these machines. But that day I said, enough is enough. I do need to do more. So I went and signed myself into a gym membership. And I took it even further. I said, okay, so since I don't know how to use the machine, why don't I hire myself a coach, a trainer? So I had a trainer working with me. We worked like maybe up to 6 months. I wanted to do more. I said, well, you know what? Since at that time, a lot of my friends were talking about hiking. They were talking about doing more exercises. They were talking about that high intensity workout. I said, well, I want to be able to participate in those conversations. And so I went to my coach. I said, listen, I need to be able to do this. And this is my goal. I want to hike. And then I don't just want to hike anywhere. I wanted to hike to Machu Picchu. And he told me, you're crazy. He said, you're not going to be able to do that. I don't want you to go up there and break your bone or die from it. I said, trust me, I'm
So
going to do
Michelle,
this.
I want to stop you right there for a second before you finish the story. When he said that to you, when he said that you're crazy, walk me through, because I know fear has a lot to do with our body, when we feel in our body. When he made that statement to you, how did your body feel? Before you get to the mind, what did you feel anything in your body?
Absolutely. I had a little, my heart just dropped, because it's almost like validating my own voice that, Michelle, you can do this. Like, who do you think you are? Your body is not made to hike. How are you going to get over the rock? And I already had that feeling that, well, I don't have a lot of orientation in terms of, the range of motion that I need with my leg. How am I supposed to, climb those rocks?
Now, what's
And those
interesting,
are,
what's interesting, so I'm hearing you say that you were very adamant about doing this. And then he said you cannot do that based on your body. And even though you're adamant, because this is the work that you do a lot of work around self-talk and building confidence. But what I'm hearing you say, I was very confident I was going to do it. But then he stopped and said, you can't do that. Look at your body. And what that said to me is, even though you're doing this work with others and other people, that even though you are doing this, that thought came back in your mind again from someone who is supposed to help you work through that process. I just want people to understand that, people like you and people like me and all these other people that I bring on a sound bombing, they look at us as superheroes, but we also have our flaws. Because you said there was a pause, like I felt this pain in my body after I said I can do it, and then he made this statement like, well, maybe he could be right, but you kept going. So keep going with the story, because I just want to unpack that right there, because I think a lot of people need to hear those things, Michelle.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And when you open by saying the superhero, one of the things that I think it's a very important concept that people need to understand, that the people who have overcome these, they're not a superhero. You are the superhero.
Yes.
You are the superhero. I am not the superhero. I'm just here to share what I had gone through. In terms of, for me, I am my own superhero, and so are you. You are your own superhero, and you can totally do this. And these people who come in as an expert, they can share the skills that have worked for them. And this is also part of my emphasis on coaching, is that I don't have the answer. I don't have the fine answer for you. I can't tell you, say, hey, Lamar, here's A, B, C, D. And if you do A, B, C, D, you will be able to get A, B, C, D. No, because each one of us is so different and so unique that what works for you, maybe Lamar, for you, it's A, C, and D. And for me, it's B, C, and E. So we jump around, and we have to be able to embrace and realize that it's the mind that's doing the trick.
So
And
speak
many of us, go ahead.
no no so speaking of the mind, I want you to share with us how you felt when you accomplished this task of climbing Machu Picchu, which is amazing. That's one of my goals. And then how did you overcome those inner critics? Because I want our listeners to know what you did and then how you support them. So it's three parts. How did you feel when you climbed the Inca Trail at Machu Picchu? That feeling, describe that feeling, and you can look at her video. She talks about it. But then what do you typically do to overcome those inner critics? And then how do you then help other people that are listening to do the same thing?
So when I got to Machu Picchu, I was looking at the Sun Gate. I said, "Oh my God, what did I do?" I was like, "Holy shit, how did I get here?" And because the Sun Gate, the last gateway to the Machu Picchu site, it's 50 steps. There's the last 50 steps, and it's about 60 to 70% incline. And basically, I couldn't use my two crutches to land on the rock safely. So I remember just getting to my hands and knees. I start to crawl through the last 50 steps. So when I got to the top, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I need a hamburger.
Where did that come from? Like, you in Machu Picchu, where did the hamburger pop up in your mind?
I was starving. I was using so much of my physical body that to the top, I realized what a relief. What a relief and an accomplishment that I know I can do this. I made it. I know that if I can have that strong mind of walking through every single day and getting up, to being determined and discipline myself enough to show up every moment, every step with my fullest energy and engagement, I can do this. And I was so relieved that it was almost like dropping all my 30 years of weight on top of the Machu Picchu. It was like, oh, here we go. I know I can do this. So it was an enormous amount of relief of my past and knowing that this is something possible. I am possible. And even up until now, even though, I have gone through and actually started my coaching practice, got certified, even now, I still experience that fear that show up, and every one of us share that self-doubt and that worry that we all experience every single day. I do have that fear. And when I experience those fear, I no longer want to push the fear away. Because my biggest fear was fear of people judging me, people looking at me differently. That fear, I don't want to just push it away anymore. I wanted to hold on to it because that fear is teaching something to me very important. It's teaching something very important to me in about that moment. And the way that you overcome it is recognizing and actually acknowledge that you have fear, that I am scared of public speaking. I am scared of people looking at me differently. I am scared of losing my business. And when you do that, fear, the power of fear that it has over you, it dropped. Because you no longer push fear away, but you're embracing it as part of how you feel. And sometimes I share with people that, the fear is just a feeling. It's a feeling, and just the same way that we feel our happiness. You don't push happiness away. You don't feel when you're happy, you embrace it, you enjoy it. You take that moment, you live in that moment. But what is it I would encourage everyone to think about what is it about fear that you want to push away, you want to avoid. It's like cutting out a piece of you and you just want to shovel it away and hide. But if you can be brave enough to hold on to your fear and really look at it and face it, then it's a different perspective.
And that's what we want. We want a different perspective because we have to have a different perspective when it comes to fear because of what's happening right now with this pandemic. And I'm so glad that you took a different look at fear. I have another question. Are you familiar with the concept of cognitive restructuring?
Yes.
So
So when you, yeah,
go ahead. No,
No,
for
no.
our listeners, so cognitive restructuring is a simple but powerful technique for identifying and undoing negative thinking patterns like worry, rumination. You know, sometimes it's the core technique in what people call cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's just a different way of having these patterns of self-talk with yourself. And I love how you talking about fear because fear is about embracing it and owning it and not denying it. And I think that cognitive restructuring or this concept of having a different conversation with yourself is another way that we can overcome some of these obstacles. Is that something that you use in your with your coaching clients, or is something that you use with yourself?
Yes, and I use this technique. It's called rephrasing, reframing in our coaching world. We call it reframing,
So
and I
give us an
encourage my
example. Give us an example of
okay.
that.
So that's say my fear right now is my business is not going in the right direction. It's not going the way that I want it to be. I plan it to be, and I have a lot of fear that my client is not going to continue their service with me, and that's my fear, right? So when the fear show up, the way that you can rephrase it is that perhaps your client is going through something very scary for them. So so maybe they don't want to continue the service with you. It's not because of you, because it's not your ability to coach them. It's not your ability to service them. It's because they are going through something very scary. So if you can think about it from that perspective, then you will be able to see that, well, this is a great opportunity for me to reach out to them and help them and support them with their fear. And if they don't want to continue the service with me, that's okay. That's okay. But I want to be there to support them, to service them.
Yeah, I love that. I want to add on to that as we talk about reframing and cognitive restructuring. What this
Mm-hmm.
means is we change the way we feel by changing the way we think about what happens to us. I know in this country, and a lot of times things don't carry in other, when you try to translate. I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase seeing is believing. And we've heard that a lot, seeing is believing. Well, based on what you said about climbing the Machu Picchu trail, it's not just seeing is believing. I believe saying is believing because you're saying it over and over in your mind and you start to believe it. That's what some people call the science of self-talk, the science of talking yourself through these things. And what I'm hearing you say from what I've read, from what I'm hearing you say
Mm-hmm.
from what how you coach individuals, what I'm hearing you say about how you overcame these obstacles as a little girl who was hit by a car and had spent a lot of time alone, but then also having this feeling of people owe me stuff. We have to definitely change the way we think and say things. We have to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And the work that you're doing around positive self-talk is very, very important. What is one of the biggest obstacles you've had to overcome in your life? And then what's something that you help one of your clients overcome that you're really, really proud of?
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest obstacles that I had to overcome is loving myself in the way that I deserve my own love. There are times where I look into the mirror, and I see myself, and I don't love my body. I don't love my body at all. And I don't like the image of myself. I don't like how I'm dressed. I don't like everything. And that was my biggest obstacle that I had to overcome. And even nowadays, when I look into the mirror, sometimes I still have that thought. And the biggest piece that I would share with all my clients is that, and it goes back to being the superhero. How do you become the superhero? You become the superhero because you love yourself so much that your love has nowhere else to go but start pouring out. That's how you become your superhero. And you only love yourself enough when you stop judging yourself, when you stop criticizing yourself. You start to realize that there's so many different ways of looking at our life situation. Everything that happened to us, that happened around us, it doesn't happen to us. It happened to everyone. And same thing with the pandemic. It doesn't just happen to one individual. It happened to the whole entire world. So you are never alone. And that was the biggest piece that I will share with my client from day one. You are not alone in this. And the other piece that I share with my client is this concept of energy leadership. So it's a concept that was developed by Bruce Schneider, and he's the founder of iPad Coaching. And he developed this whole concept of you have 7 different ways of looking at your life and how you view and see yourself. And he actually gave me, going through his this whole coaching program, it gave me a whole new different language to identify myself of my own situation and how do I want to choose to show up in this world so that it can create a positive impact for everyone else. And so that's another piece that I share very often with my clients.
What's something that you're proud of that you helped your client, one of your clients, overcome?
I am very proud of that I am able to show my clients that there's a way out, and most of it that they're able to see it with love. They're able to see things with love. The love to their fear, the love to their self-doubt. They're able to feel compassionate to themselves.
And what do you love most about coaching? What brings you excitement when you sit down face to face or via Zoom or Skype when you're coaching one of your clients?
When I coach one of my clients, a big aha moment, and I experience these aha moments sometimes all the time in my life. And I will be having a conversation, and there I goes, and here I am working with the client, and I give them something, and they're like, "Oh, aha, I didn't see that." And so I love these aha moments that jump out of our coaching session because like shining a light on someone's consciousness, and they just pop. It just come to life, and suddenly they see it differently, and they can tell you, and you can see them. If I'm doing Zoom, I can see how their energy just change, going from the victim mindset to, oh, there is a possibility in this life. Why didn't I see that before? And I've experienced it too. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had my aha moment when I was talking to one of my coach friends. So I love the aha moments.
So the aha moments bring you a lot of joy. So I know that this is an aha moment. It has to be. To walk me through if there's been a day where you just sat back and you thought about the little girl from Taiwan who was hit by a car, who moved to America, who walked differently from the rest of the people, who looked different from the rest of the people, who went on to get a doctorate, who went on to write an amazing book, who went on to create an amazing podcast and speaking to people across the country. Walk me through that aha moment. How does that make you feel when you think about that?
It brings a smile to my face as you're describing all this. So that smiles come from the fact that if I were to meet that little girl today, I would tell that little girl, hey, it's okay. I know it hurts from time to time. I know it's very uncomfortable from time to time, but this is your journey. You needed this in order to come through, in order to reach to the end of the tunnel. This is all part of it. Without this very important step, I wouldn't be here today. So thank you. Thank you for sticking to it. Thank you for keep showing up, even though it's very difficult. And thank you for learning all these baby steps and taking these baby steps and be willing to take those baby steps, even though you have a lot of fear.
Well, I just
because those
go ahead, finish your
go ahead.
statement. Go ahead, finish your statement.
Because those are very important experience that you had to go through in order to become who I am today.
Wow, that was great. So, Michelle, what inspired you to write your book?
What is I always knew I wanted to write a book, that the book was already sitting inside of me, but I couldn't get it out. I didn't understand what I wanted to write about and what is my story. So I was really confused in terms of who I am and how I want to show up in the world. And when I started into this whole coaching program, I realized that that book was calling me out louder and louder. And so I decided to work with a coach. And when I was sitting down talking to my coach, he said, well, what is it that you want to do? And how do you want to reach to more audience? Because one of the things that I was looking for and I was struggling when I first started is to reach out to the audience. How do I reach to more people? And he said, well, have you thought about writing a book? I said, that's interesting because that book idea has always been sitting with me for the longest time. I just didn't know what I want to write. So we brainstormed and a couple of ideas came up and he said, well, you had an amazing journey. Why don't you write about yourself? I said, okay, I can marinate on that idea. Maybe I do have a story. So there was a lot of, that self-doubt moment and that I don't know if I can publish. I don't know if I can write. I don't know if this is going to be well received. What if no one buys my book and no one appreciates it? Like, what do I do? But then he was able to use the same coaching skills that, now I'm using on my clients. And he said, well, here are the steps. Why don't we not look at the bigger picture into the future? Let's break it down into small baby steps. Let's break it down to, if you're going to write a book, let's not talk about what you're going to write about. Let's break it down to when you want to publish and by when you want to have a published editor to look at. So we broke it down into little tiny baby steps. And as I was going through that process, then I realized I do have a story, and the story is about me. It's about me, how I overcame my fear, how I have overcome all these challenges, and that is my book. I am the story.
Well, I told you, Sound Bombing community, that Michelle was going to bring the heat, and she did. She did not let us down. Michelle, how can our Sound Bombing community get in contact with you if they want to coaching, if they want to pick up your book, if they want to bring you to here, if they want to bring you to their city? Well, nobody's being brought to any cities, but you can be brought electronically. How could they get in contact with you?
They can go to my website, and I have all the information on my website at elevatelifecoaching.org. And for people who love to follow me on Instagram, I would be at Elevate Life Coach.
All right, before you get out of here, Michelle, this is my favorite part of the show. It's called the Super Bomb Questions, where I get a chance to ask you some questions that I want you to respond to quickly, and I want you to give it a whole bunch of thought. But I want you just to, allow our listeners to find out a different part about Michelle. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right, so here we go. What is your favorite word?
Love.
What is your favorite quote or a spiritual scripture?
The kingdom is within you.
What's your superpower?
My superpower is vulnerability.
What moves you to tears of joy?
Listen to people sharing their transformational journey.
What moves you to tears of sorrow?
Watching people going through suffering.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
I wish I had more time to do. I don't know. I have to marinate on that one.
You just wish you had more time.
I just wish I had more time. Could that be an answer?
That would be your answer. What's your morning routine? Give me 3 things that you typically do to start your day.
Coffee, number 1. Meditation, number 2. And gratitude journal.
All right. If you were in a Miss America talent competition, what would your talent be?
My talent would be I have so many talents. Which one should we talk about? I think I can sing. I can sing pretty well.
You can sing pretty
Yeah.
well. All right. Well,
Hmm.
Michelle, I want to thank you. Thank you for joining me in the bomb shelter today. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Was that okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I also want to thank my engineer, Alec Blanc, my producer, Kimberly Peterson, Supremacy, for our theme music, and all of you for listening. And make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, stop being stingy, and share me with all of your friends. We're on every platform. We're on Stitcher, we're on iTunes, we're on iHeartRadio, we're about to be on Pandora. So you can check us out anywhere. And as always, believe that something wonderful is about to happen and that some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess. Thanks for tuning in, and do something for someone other than yourself today. You've been listening to Sound Bombing. Thank you. Peace.